On the line right now is Spencer Critchley. He's a Democratic strategist, worked with the Obama administration and campaign in 08 and 12. And the question is, are Democrats going down the right road? Elizabeth Warren made impeaching President Trump a key campaign issue the other day when she became the first Democratic presidential candidate to call for it publicly. Spencer, what do you think? Is she going down the right road? And is this small group of Democrats calling for impeachment, is this the right move?
Well, I was one of those who was arguing that we should take this slowly because impeachment is not the same as a trial. It is a political process, and I think it's rightly a political process. People often, of course, use the word political as a negative, but it does have a higher meaning, which means that it needs to be a reflection of popular will, and that's the way founders designed it the way they did. The trouble is that I think that our hand is pretty much being forced, both by President Trump's behavior and now by the Mueller report. I agree with J.W. Verrett, who's a George Mason professor and a member of the Trump transition team in 2016, who says the Mueller report is a tipping point.
When you look through the Mueller report, though, while it does seem that the president was in the process of obstructing justice, it does, and you can't argue that when you read through how he put it almost in bullet point fashion. But the problem is that the people around him didn't really seem to act on it. Like he'd ask someone to do something and they'd be okay, and then they wouldn't do it. So if the act wasn't actually committed, is that obstruction? I think that is a very gray area. What do you think?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I understand, it is obstruction. It's kind of like if you have every intention of robbing the bank, but you can't manage to get in the door, you're still trying to rob the bank. He was, lying. He was ordering other people to lie. He fired people. He ordered other people to fire other people, famously in the case of Don McGahn. And, really, he should be thanking Don McGahn for refusing to fire Mueller when the president demanded that he do it. But, as I understand it, it's a crime to attempt to obstruct justice, and if it doesn't end up being carried out,
right.
I mean, that's obviously better for democracy, but it's still a crime.
You bring up public opinion. It does not seem that the public opinion is there to impeach this president right now, and certainly the Senate, run by Republicans, it is. If you're Republican, it is absolutely not there. So, is it worth going through all of this and then finding in the Senate that just like with Bill Clinton, they don't close the door on impeachment, or I guess they really do close the door on impeachment like they did with Bill Clinton. Is it worth going through all this when nothing's going to come out of it?
Yeah, well, this is why, I agreed with Speaker Pelosi that we needed to take this slowly. But as I say, I think we've reached a tipping point where you just have to choose the principle of the thing over the politics. I also am not convinced anymore that the politics are as bad as everybody fears. I think one of the things the Trump administration is counting on is that many people just don't read anymore, and instead they consume video and social media and sound bites, essentially. And so they're out there continuing to repeat these assertions that he's been completely and totally exonerated. By the way, I'm not sure what the difference between completely and totally is. But if you actually read, and unfortunately fewer and fewer of us make the time to read anymore, if you actually read the report, it's devastating. And I think at a certain point we just have to stand up for the principle of the thing. And I think that politically, as the process plays out and voters are exposed to hours upon hours of video of what's in that report, I think public opinion might very well change.
The key word there was might. And if it doesn't, you're going to end up like the Republicans did with Clinton.
Possibly. But again, I think the first consideration has to be doing what's right and what's really demanded by the way the founders designed the system. And sometimes, doing the right thing means doing the hard thing. And it may even require accepting defeat. But I think taking the long view,
all right,
this is the tipping point, and I think we just have to do what's right.
All right. So
furthermore,
go ahead.
I think also one thing Democrats underestimate is the power of fighting a fight and showing you got some fight in you. I mean, polls change, and they often change in response to strong leadership.
Well, I do have to ask you, how in the world we're talking about getting public opinion on your side? How do you only have a handful of Democrats that are willing to get down this road right now? How do you get Democrats in the House to? We talked to Anthony Brindisi here, who's a congressman from the 22nd Congressional District, who said enough is enough. We got to move on. Let's just move on to the business of the country and begin to do work for the people. Why we were sent here. There are several people like him that aren't going to go with this. I don't think you have the numbers to pull it off.
I actually think that we're converging on a consensus, and, I don't know, but if I read the tea leaves right, I kind of think that Nancy Pelosi and the congressional leadership are moving in this direction. They're going to take it slowly. They're going to start by continuing to investigate and getting people to come to the Hill and testify. But I think where this leads is a vote on impeachment articles. It's just that they're not going to do that tomorrow. And I agree with that. I think that's basically the right approach.
Yeah.
I also think it's important to remember that we can always do more than one thing at a time. I completely agree that Democrats should not be just talking about impeachment all the time and running on impeachment, but I don't think they did that last year in the midterms, and I don't think they'll do it this time. I think it makes much more sense to talk about, do you want to keep your health care?
Yep.
Do you think rich people and corporations should get huge tax cuts while the debt gets run up and you end up with the crumbs? I think those are the issues that the average voter cares most about.
All right. I know you're out of time. Spencer Critchley, thanks for taking the time this morning. I appreciate it. We'll do it again.
My pleasure.
Right.
Thank you.
He was with Obama's campaign in 2008 and 2012. I think he's absolutely wrong. I think they're barking up the wrong tree. And this is a stupid move, in my opinion.
I completely agree. And then he's talking about another investigation. Like we need another investigation.
Well, what he's talking about is Congress. They're subpoenaing, they're interviewing, they're doing, which is what is supposed to happen. It won't be a special investigator. That is supposed to happen. But they're going to spend all their time doing that. As Brindisi said yesterday or the day before, what was it? I forget. It was Monday. Said it's time for us to start doing the work of the people here. Let's accomplish something and be able to run on that. Instead, it's all hatred of this president. I think it's a big, gigantic mistake.